My name is Gloria Bennett, 67 years old, grandmother of one, retired detective from the Seattle Police Department. I traded my badge for a garden and a quiet porch years ago, but the thing about instincts is they never really retire. They just wait for the phone to ring again. That night, it did. 17 a.m. The kind of hour when even the city seems to hold its breath. Rain tapped on my window like nervous fingers. The ringtone was faint at first, then sharper, cutting through the dark. I fumbled for the phone, eyes half blind from sleep. "Grandma," a voice trembled, thin as glass. "I'm at the police station. He hit me, but they think I hit him." My heart stopped for half a beat. "Lila..." "Honey, slow down. Where are you exactly?" "I'm in holding," she sobbed. They put me in a chair. "He's saying I went after him, but I didn't. I swear I didn't." Her breath came in short bursts. Behind her voice, I could hear the fluorescent hum of a precinct, the low chatter of officers who didn't believe her. "Don't talk anymore," I said firmly, reaching for the jeans draped over the chair. "I'm coming. Don't say another word until you see me. Do you understand?" "Yes, Grandma." The line clicked dead. I sat there for a moment, phone still pressed to my ear, hearing the echo of her fear in the silence. Old habits kicked in. I grabbed my worn leather jacket, the same one I'd worn my last day on the force, and my car keys. The mirror by the door caught a glimpse of me, hair in a silver braid, eyes sharper than they had any right to be at that hour. Seattle rain came down steady as I drove, the wipers struggling to keep up. Empty streets stretched ahead, slick with reflections from the streetlights. I kept my hands tight on the wheel, replaying her words over and over. "He hit me. They think I hit him. Derek Walsh." Lila's stepfather, the man who smiled too easily, who spoke to everyone like he was performing kindness. I'd never trusted him. Not once. As I pulled into the precinct's parking lot, the neon glow on wet asphalt looked like a crime scene in reverse. I turned off the engine and whispered to myself, "You've handled monsters before, Gloria. Tonight, it's personal." The station looked smaller than I remembered, maybe because I was seeing it through the eyes of a grandmother, not a detective. The smell hit first, burnt coffee, bleach, and the faint metallic trace of fear. The kind of scent that clings to places where truth gets twisted before dawn. Officer Brian Chen sat behind the front desk, tapping nervously on a keyboard. Young, maybe mid-20s, still wearing that fresh academy pride on his shoulders. When he looked up and saw me, I caught the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Ma'am, visiting hours are..." "Save it," I said, flipping my old badge open just enough for him to read the name. Gloria Bennett, retired homicide. My granddaughter Lila Walsh was brought in an hour ago. "I'm here to see her," he swallowed hard. "She's in holding too." "Ma'am." "But her stepfather..." "I know who he is," I interrupted. "Show me." The holding area was a narrow hallway washed in harsh fluorescent light. On the far end sat Lila, cuffed to a metal rail with a plastic zip tie cutting into her wrist. Her left cheek was swollen, one eye darkening into purple. She looked up as I entered, eyes wide, trembling between hope and shame. "Grandma," she whispered. I took a slow breath. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here, across the room." Derek Walsh leaned against a filing counter like he owned the place. His designer shirt was stained with a small streak of dried blood near the collar. A thin scratch ran along his jaw, barely enough to sting, but apparently enough to spin a story. He flashed that smug half-smile, the kind that makes your fist itch. "She attacked me," he said smoothly to the officers. "She went crazy." I turned to Officer Chen. "And you believed him?" He hesitated, face flushing. He said she came at him with a knife. "Did anyone find a knife?" Silence. That's when a familiar voice came from behind me. Gloria Bennett. I'll be damned. Detective Carla Ruiz is still sharp as ever, uniform neat, expression colder than steel. We'd worked side by side for 10 years before I retired. "Carla," I said quietly. "Good to see someone who still knows what they're doing." Her eyes flicked to Lila, then to Derek. "Let's find out who's really telling the truth." In that moment, the air shifted. The game had changed. Detective Ruiz led me into the observation room, a small space with one-way glass and a table scattered with half-finished reports. She looked exactly how I remembered her. Calm, analytical, the kind of person who could find logic in chaos. Officer Chen followed behind, notebook trembling in his hands. "Start from the top," Ruiz said. "What do we have?" Chen cleared his throat. "Mr. Walsh claims Lila attacked him with a kitchen knife after an argument. Says she's been unstable for weeks. He has a scratch on his jaw and a split lip." I looked through the glass at my granddaughter. She sat motionless, her hands clenched in her lap. "And her injuries?" I asked, bruised cheekbone, swelling, a cut on her eyebrow. Chen answered quietly. "No knife recovered at the scene." "Of course not," I muttered, "because there never was one." Ruiz shot me a look. "What makes you so sure?" "Experience," I said. "Men like him don't need knives. They use control, charm, and fists." Chen hesitated. "There's one more thing. The 911 call started just before hers. You might want to hear..." Ruiz pressed play. The recording filled the room with chaos. Derek's voice shouting. Furniture scraping. Crash. Lila's panicked breathing, then his words, sharp as blades. "You tell anyone and I'll make sure they think you're the crazy one." I watched Chen's face pale. He stopped the tape halfway through, unable to listen to more. "The timestamp?" I asked. 11:47 p.m., he said. "Matches the 911 log exactly." Ruiz crossed her arms, exhaling slowly. "That's premeditated manipulation. He wanted her blamed before we even arrived." I pointed toward the evidence board. "Check the building's hallway camera. If it's a standard Seattle housing model, footage refreshes every 72 hours. We've got less than 2. Chen typed quickly. Eyes wide, footage found. Building C, 3rd floor. 11:42 p.m. Derek Walsh dragging Lila inside by the arm. No knife in sight. Ruiz smirked. Guess our victim isn't who he thought. Through the glass, Derek paced like a cornered wolf. The smugness had started to crack. Lila caught my gaze for just a second. Hope flickered there. Small, but alive. I leaned close to Ruiz and whispered, "Told you. Evidence never lies, but abusers always do." By sunrise, Ruiz had everything she needed to hold Derek for questioning. But Lila was pale and shaking, her wrists red from the plastic cuffs. I insisted she be taken to the hospital before anyone asked her another thing. Carla didn't argue. She knew that tone from the old days. At St. Mary's, the emergency ward buzzed quietly with the sounds of heart monitors and distant wheels on tile. A young nurse guided Lila to an exam room, and I followed close behind, still half running on adrenaline and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. When the doctor entered, her eyes softened the moment she saw Lila. "We'll take care of you, sweetheart," she said. Gentle but firm. They began documenting everything. Photos of bruises, measurements, notes in tidy handwriting. Each flash of the camera felt like another small piece of truth being restored. The results hit like a second punch. 2 ribs, partially healed from older fractures. A wrist that had been broken months ago. Bruises in different stages of color. New, old, hidden under sleeves. The doctor turned to me, voice low. "This wasn't the first time." I nodded slowly. "I know. I just didn't see it soon enough." Lila sat on the exam table, hands folded in her lap, eyes glassy. "He said if I told, no one would believe me," she whispered. "Said Grandma used to arrest people like me." Liars. That one hurt. I stepped closer, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "You're not a liar, Lila. You're the bravest person I know." The nurse finished taping a gauze strip above her brow, her movements careful and tender. "We're required to report this to Child Protective Services and the DA's office," she said. "You're doing the right thing." Outside the room, I caught Ruiz waiting by the door with 2 coffees. She handed me one without a word. "DA Monica Green's on her way," she said. "We're filing charges tonight." I looked back through the small window at Lila sitting under the harsh white light, her small frame dwarfed by the hospital bed. For the first time since the call, I felt the weight settle in my chest, not fear, but fury, sharp and clean. "I've seen monsters before," I told Ruiz quietly, "but it's different when one marries your daughter." By the time we returned to the precinct, the air had shifted. The officers who once avoided my gaze now nodded as I passed. Evidence doesn't just clear the innocent. It rearranges a room. Detective Ruiz had already started her report. Her desk lay printed stills from the hallway footage and my transcript of Lila's 911 call. Derek. Walsh sat in interview room 2, pretending confidence while his leg bounced under the table. District Attorney Monica Green arrived moments later, her presence steady and precise. "You still got it, Bennett?" she said with a faint smile. We'd worked together on homicide cases 20 years earlier. He's done. We're charging him with assault, falsifying a report, witness intimidation, and tampering with evidence. Ruiz looked up from her computer. You should see his face. He can't believe a teenager outsmarted him. I glanced through the glass wall. Derek looked smaller now, the Polish stripped away. When Green stepped inside to read him his rights, he still tried to charm her, calling her sweetheart, offering excuses about discipline gone wrong. She didn't flinch. I'd trained her well. When the cuffs snapped on, something in him broke. He lunged toward the door, shouting, "You think this makes us even, Bennett? You think I forgot what you did to my brother?" The room froze. Ruiz turned to me. His brother? I nodded slowly, the memory rising like smoke. Tommy Walsh. Gas station robbery. 98. 25 years in Walla Walla. Derek was just a kid sitting in the courtroom. I didn't recognize him till now. Derek sneered. He said, "You ruined our family." Guess it's my turn. Your brother ruined himself, I said quietly. You just followed the family business. Ruiz and Green pulled him out as he kicked and shouted, his voice echoing down the corridor. Lila, sitting in the waiting area with a blanket over her shoulders, didn't look up. I knelt beside her. It's over, I whispered. She shook her head. It doesn't feel over. No, I admitted. It never really does. But now the right person's in handcuffs. Outside, dawn broke pale over the city. For the first time in a long while, I let myself believe that justice, though late, had finally arrived at our door. Evelyn arrived the next afternoon, suitcase still half-zipped, her face streaked with tears. She hadn't even gone home from the airport. Ruiz had called her mid-flight. The moment she saw Lila sitting on my porch swing, wrapped in a blanket, she broke. "Oh God, baby," she cried, falling to her knees. "I should have seen. I should have listened." Lila didn't move at first. She just stared ahead, eyes hollow from exhaustion. Then slowly she leaned forward, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. It was the first time they'd touched in months. The porch went silent except for the wind chimes and Evelyn's quiet sobs. Over the next few weeks, my house filled with the small sounds of recovery, the kettle whistling, the soft rustle of blankets, the hum of the washing machine late at night. I converted my guest room for Lila, painted the walls pale green. The color, she said, made her feel calm. She started therapy twice a week with Dr. Marin Singh, a trauma specialist. I drove her myself every session, rain or shine. Healing wasn't neat. Some days she laughed like nothing had ever happened. Other days she woke screaming. Evelyn blamed herself endlessly, replaying every missed sign, every bruise Lila brushed off, every time Derek said she was just emotional. You couldn't have known, I told her one evening over coffee. He fooled everyone, even a cop who spent 30 years spotting liars. She looked at me, eyes rimmed red. You're being kind. No, I said, I'm being honest. Lila started drawing again. Sketches of birds, of doors cracked, open, of hands reaching toward the light. I found them taped along her wall like breadcrumbs leading out of a dark place. One night, she came to me in the kitchen holding her sketchbook. "Grandma," she said quietly, "how do you stop being scared?" I thought for a moment before answering. "You don't. You just make friends with fear until it gets tired and leaves." She smiled a little at that. The kind of smile that's half hope, half healing. We sat there drinking cocoa as the rain whispered against the windows. 3 generations under one roof, all learning to breathe again. It was late March when Officer Brian Chen showed up at my door again. He held a small paper bag from the bakery down the street and looked about as nervous as he had that first night in the station. "I thought maybe you'd like a real cup of coffee." "Ma'am," he said, "not that burnt precinct stuff." I smiled and invited him in. Lila was at the kitchen table working on a school essay. Her notebook opened beside a half-eaten muffin. She glanced up, wary, then softened when she recognized him. "Officer Chen," she said quietly. "Just Brian. Please." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I wanted to tell you both something. Because of your case, the department's launching a new domestic violence initiative. It's being called the Bennett Protocol." I froze for a second. "You're joking." He shook his head. "No, ma'am. It focuses on training officers to identify manipulation and collect real-time evidence. Recordings, medical checks, timestamps, all of it. The goal is to make sure no one else goes through what Lila did." Lila blinked, stunned. "They're naming it after us?" Brian smiled. "After you, mostly. You're the reason I started questioning what I see instead of just who's louder." Ruiz joined later that week to brief me on the rollout. "You'd be proud." "Gloria," she said, "this protocol is going statewide next quarter. Green's pushing it to the Attorney General." That night, Lila stayed up late writing a short op-ed for her school paper titled, "When the Evidence Finally Listens." She read it to us over dinner. Her voice wavered only once, when she said, "Believing someone doesn't cost a thing, but it can save everything." I felt something shift in me, something old and tired, but finally at peace. Before bed, I looked out at the wet streetlight glow. Holding the mug Brian had brought, I whispered to the night, "Justice isn't just about arrests. It's about who learns from them." From that day forward, every rookie in Seattle learned about the Bennett Protocol, and somewhere in those lessons, a 16-year-old girl's courage was teaching them all how to listen. A year passed quietly, the kind of quiet that feels earned. Spring melted into summer, and Lila grew taller, her confidence blooming in the same space that once held her fear. She was 17 now, captain of the debate team, her laughter filling corners of the house that had been silent for too long. The night of her graduation, the gym was packed, streamers hanging from the rafters. Evelyn and I sat side by side, hands clasped tight as Lila stepped up to the podium in her pale blue gown. Her speech was titled, "The Power of Being Believed." "I used to think bravery meant not crying," she said, voice steady into the microphone. "But sometimes bravery is crying and telling the truth anyway." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. When she finished, the applause felt like thunder rolling through the building. I couldn't stop smiling. After the ceremony, Lila handed me a small velvet box. "For you, Grandma," she said. Inside was a silver keychain engraved with 5 words, "For the ones who believed." I ran my thumb over the letters, unable to speak. She grinned, the same grin she had as a child, missing teeth and full of light. Months later, I heard from Brian again. Now Detective Chen thought the Bennett Protocol had been adopted. In 3 neighboring states, Ruiz sent me a photo from a training seminar. My name was printed on the banner behind the podium. I laughed when I saw it. Life has a funny way of coming full circle. Sometimes at night, when the rain hums against the windows and the city glows beneath the clouds, I sit on the porch swing where it all began. The air smells of wet cedar, and I can almost hear that 3:17 a.m. ringtone echoing faintly in my memory, but now it doesn't sound like fear, it sounds like a beginning. If you're listening to this story and it touched something in you, share it. Tell someone you trust. Leave a comment, let me know where you're watching from, because sometimes justice doesn't start in a courtroom. It starts with one person who decides to believe, and for me, that person was my granddaughter, Lila Bennett. She reminded me that even in the darkest hours, the light always finds a way back home.